The air over occupied Europe in 1943 was a killing field. For the young men of the U.S. Army Air Forces, USAF, flying B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, every mission was a roll of the dice with death. Their mission was to cripple Nazi Germany's war machine, to bomb the factories, rail yards, and oil refineries that fueled the Third Reich. But these daylight precision bombing raids came at a horrifying cost. The bombers, though bristling with machine guns, were slow and vulnerable. They were lambs led to slaughter, their only protection being the hope of a short-range escort fighter, a hope that quickly evaporated as they ventured deep into enemy territory. The problem was simple and deadly: no Allied fighter had the range to fly with the bombers all the way to their targets and back. The British Spitfires and American P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings could offer protection for a time, but they had to turn back, leaving the bomber crews to face the full fury of the Luftwaffe alone. The German pilots, flying their nimble Messerschmitt Bf-109s and deadly Focke-Wulf FW-190s, were predators in their element. They learned the bombers' routes, their vulnerabilities, and their lack of a guardian angel in the deep reaches of Germany. The sky was filled with contrails, and the contrails were filled with death, one bomber pilot grimly recalled. The losses were unsustainable. On one mission to Schweinfurt in October 1943, a staggering 60 bombers, about 25% of the force, were shot down. The morale of the bomber crews plummeted, and it became clear that the daylight bombing campaign, the very cornerstone of Allied strategy, was on the verge of collapse. Meanwhile, an aircraft with an inauspicious start was waiting in the wings. Its story began not in a military planning room, but with a British purchasing commission. In 1940, with the Battle of Britain raging, the British Royal Air Force, RAF, was desperate for more fighters. They approached North American Aviation, a company known for its trainers and medium bombers, to build Curtiss P-40 Warhawks under license. North American's president, James Dutch Kindleberger, famously replied, "We'll build you a better plane." And they did, in a jaw-droppingly short 120 days. The result was the NA-73X, a sleek, low-drag fighter that was given the British name Mustang. From the outset, the Mustang was a marvel of aerodynamic design. Its most distinctive feature was the laminar flow wing, a revolutionary design that reduced drag and allowed for a higher top speed. Its sleek fuselage, designed for efficiency, and its innovative cooling system, which used the airflow over the radiator to provide a small amount of forward thrust, were testaments to the genius of its designers, particularly Edgar Schmood. Early versions of the Mustang, designated the P-51A, were equipped with the Allison V1710 engine. This engine was a solid, reliable power plant, but it had a critical flaw for the air war over Europe: its performance dropped off dramatically at higher altitudes, precisely where the bombers needed protection. The early P-51s were used by the RAF for low-level reconnaissance and ground attack missions, a role for which they were perfectly suited. Pilots praised its excellent handling, incredible range, and low-altitude speed. The Americans also adopted the Allison-powered P-51, using it in the China-Burma-India theater and for tactical missions. But as an escort fighter for the high-altitude bomber streams over Germany, it was an ugly duckling. It couldn't climb or fight effectively at the altitudes where the real battles were fought. It was like trying to punch a ghost, one pilot noted. You could see the enemy fighters, but you couldn't get to them. The P-51 was a superb aircraft, but it was in the wrong war, or so it seemed. The USAF considered the Mustang a secondary aircraft, more of a supplement to the P-47 and P-38 than a potential savior. The stage was set for a dramatic turning point. A simple suggestion, born of necessity and a touch of genius, would soon change the course of the air war. The British had been using a different engine, the Rolls-Royce Merlin, in their Spitfires with great success. The Merlin was a supercharged, high-altitude powerhouse, and its roar was the sound of victory in the Battle of Britain. A light bulb went off in the mind of an American test pilot and engineer, Ronald Harker, who, while evaluating the Mustang, suggested that the British try fitting a Merlin engine into the P-51 airframe. The combination of the Mustang's revolutionary airframe and the Merlin's high-altitude performance was a tantalizing prospect. The British, in a moment of inspired collaboration, took up the challenge. They modified a P-51 with a Merlin engine, creating the Mustang X. The results were nothing short of sensational. The prototype's top speed jumped by over 50 miles per hour, and its high-altitude performance was transformed from a weakness into an unparalleled strength. It was no longer an ugly duckling, but a majestic swan, ready to take flight. The year 1944 marked the beginning of the end for the Luftwaffe. The catalyst for this dramatic shift was the P-51B and P-51C, the American-built Mustangs equipped with the Packard-built version of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. When these new Mustangs arrived in England, their sleek, powerful silhouette was a promise of a new kind of air war. The pilots of the USAF's 8th Air Force, who had been flying their short-legged P-47S and P-38S, were given the keys to their new steeds. They found an aircraft that was not only fast and nimble but, most importantly, could go the distance. With the addition of a massive internal fuselage tank and external drop tanks, the Mustang's range was extended to an unprecedented 1,500 miles, making it the first Allied fighter capable of escorting bombers all the way to Berlin and back. The strategic shift was immediate and profound. The 8th Air Force commander, General Carl Toohey Spaatz, and his fighter chief, General Jimmy Doolittle, gave the Mustang pilots a new mandate. They weren't just to defend the bombers, they were to hunt the Luftwaffe. Doolittle's famous order was to go in and get the enemy. The pilots were no longer tied to the bomber formations. Once the bombs were dropped, they were free to seek out and destroy German fighters on their home turf. This was the turning point. The Luftwaffe, accustomed to a predictable cat-and-mouse game with short-range fighters, was now facing a new, relentless predator. The Mustangs would often arrive over the target ahead of the bombers, clearing the skies of any waiting German fighters. Then, on the way back, they would sweep low over airfields, destroying enemy planes on the ground, and strafe convoys and trains. The Luftwaffe found itself in a desperate two-front war, both in the air and on the ground. The Mustang's performance was a revelation. It could outclimb, outrun, and outturn the German Bf-109s and FW-190s at high altitudes. Its 6.50 caliber machine guns delivered a punishing volley of fire. The Luftwaffe pilots, once confident in their numerical and tactical superiority, now faced an enemy they couldn't shake. "We saw a new type of American fighter," a German pilot recalled. "It was fast and it stayed with the bombers all the way to Berlin. We were no longer safe." The battles were intense and often decisive. The Mustang pilots, many of them veterans of the bomber escort missions, were skilled and aggressive. They developed new tactics, such as the weave, where two fighters would fly in a crisscross pattern to cover each other's blind spots. They also learned to use the Mustang's exceptional speed in high-speed dives, a maneuver that few German fighters could match. The peak intensity of this aerial campaign came in the early months of 1944, a period known as the Big Week. From February 20 to 25, the USAF launched a massive, concentrated bombing effort against German aircraft production centers. The Luftwaffe, in a desperate attempt to defend its homeland, committed its fighters to a series of massive, pitched battles. The Mustang pilots were there to meet them. In dogfights over Brunswick, Leipzig, and Gotha, the Mustangs exacted a terrible toll. The Luftwaffe lost hundreds of its best pilots and planes, a loss from which it would never truly recover. The Mustang's victory was not just a matter of technology, it was a psychological blow. The German pilots' morale was shattered. They were no longer the hunters, they were the hunted. The aftermath of the Mustang's ascendance was devastating for Germany. With the Luftwaffe's wings clipped, the daylight bombing campaign became a relentless, daily assault. The bombers, now protected all the way to their targets, could operate with impunity. Germany's industrial heartland was pounded into rubble. The Mustang's stranglehold on the skies was so complete that by the time of the D-Day landings in June 1944, the Luftwaffe was a spent force. German soldiers on the beaches of Normandy looked up at a sky dominated by Allied aircraft, a sky that offered them no protection. The Mustang's air superiority role was pivotal, ensuring the success of the ground invasion and the swift advance of Allied forces. The long-term impact of the P-51 Mustang on history and warfare is immeasurable. It didn't just win the air war, it redefined it. The Mustang proved the strategic necessity of a long-range escort fighter, a lesson that would be applied in future conflicts. Its success led to the development of even more powerful piston-engine fighters and laid the groundwork for the jet age. The P-51 became a symbol of American air power and ingenuity, a testament to the fact that with the right combination of technology and tactics, a seemingly insurmountable problem could be overcome. Its legacy endures, not just in museums and heirs' house, but in the annals of history as the aircraft that helped turn the tide of the war in Europe and brought a nation's air force to its knees. The P-51 Mustang, the Cadillac of the skies, was Germany's worst nightmare, and for the young men of the bomber crews, it was a guardian angel with 6 guns and an endless reach.